Welcome back, everybody, to the Relay Throw. I think this is actually my first time ever hosting an episode of this, so that's pretty exciting. But today we're going to talk all about men's soccer. By the way, I'm Luke, the co-editor-in-chief of Center Field, and I'm also the men's soccer beat writer. So today we have gathered three of our contributors who have been following the team this season through shadowing, filling in for gamers, making contributions through that, sidebars, that sort of thing. So first we have August, who's a contributor. We also have Finn and Ryan as well. So just go around the horn and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm August. I'm a sophomore. I filled in for a lot of beats, softball, soccer. I filled in for 2 soccer games this year. So I think I know what I'm talking about.
I'm Finnegan Corcoran-Doolin. I am also a sophomore. I've filled in for a couple of times at soccer last year, men's soccer, women's soccer. I also commentate for ESPN Plus, and I've done that twice for women's soccer.
I am Ryan. I'm a freshman. I've done a couple of pieces for men's soccer, a couple sidebars. I've also done some women's soccer stuff, and this is my first time here. I'm really excited to be here.
Alrighty, so let's get right into it. We're going to kind of look first at the early leg of the season, and then, we'll go around the horn, and I'm going to kind of just play point guard here, and you guys will all give your takes on your impressions of the team and what you've seen. So obviously, the first leg of the season, particularly the first 3 matches of a non-conference play, it was tough. Marist was going against really difficult opponents, that have kind of been in and out of the national rankings in Wisconsin, Marquette, and Cornell, and they were outscored 13-1, kind of predictably over that stretch because they were definitely playing teams that were out of their league. And, just it was a bit of a tough slog to get through. And so, through that, I guess, what are some of the positives that could be gained when you're playing teams that are just of a higher competition level?
So immediately right off the bat, I just think of the mental aspect of the game. It's hard to walk in to a different state on a road trip and lose 10-0, 11-0 almost. I think Vidge's guys being able to go through that made it really easy for them to come back to Poughkeepsie and kind of defend the home a bit. And when I watched the Cornell game, I wasn't familiar with Cornell's ranking. I thought it was almost an even ranked match before I did the preliminary research. And they did lose, but from what I saw, I was not as worried as I would have been when they lost in Milwaukee in that fashion. So I think they're more resilient now. I think they can handle their business in the MAAC because they've played such tough opponents.
Yeah, I think it's always sort of a good thing going against really tough opponents because sometimes they do have a lot more skills, a lot more better footwork, experience-wise. Wisconsin and Marquette are 2 really, really good teams that nationally are, I believe Wisconsin is ranked. They went up against Fordham too, which I think it was a really good game. I know Luke was there. You were there too for it. And it, going against ranked teams and teams that are kind of, that could beat you, it's always, I think, a good thing because you go into that game thinking, hey, what can we do here? And you learn a lot out of it, especially the other tactics coming from these coaches. So I always think it's a really positive playing these teams, and it's even, I think, a cooler experience for the players, like even the Verheel brothers, to see them, go to Wisconsin. So, I think it's like, oh, they're traveling around. So I think for me, it's a really positive. I don't know.
Yeah, just kind of echoing the 2 points here. I feel like early in the season, going to those tougher teams, you get to kind of figure out your lineup a little bit. We've got a lot of youth in the squad this year, a lot of different moving parts, a lot of people coming back from injuries. So seeing kind of who mixes well with who, you get to have some tougher opponents, maybe learn a little bit about yourselves. But then going with that as well, you get to kind of build together the group. I've been on a lot of losing teams in my sports career, and going to those tough teams and taking some tough losses, you get to really get a really sense of being a group together and building that relationship with each other and practicing and working towards the next game and the next game, and knowing that it might not be any easier the next game, but you still got to keep going. You still got to get together the group and get closer coming to the rest of the season.
So I think you guys brought up some good points, and we're going to kind of go into some of the specific matches that they've had over the course of their schedule that have been turning points in their season, as well as some of the new players in a moment. But before we get into like those nitty gritty specifics, when I spoke with Coach Matt Vigiano, I think it's his 18th season here now. He's been here for almost 2 decades. Before the season, he was very candid with me when I interviewed him for the team preview about how he wasn't really sure about what the team's expectations should be for this season. He had a cautiously optimistic tone, but when I asked him the question, where do you see your team ending up this year, he goes, I honestly don't really know what to tell you, because there are so many newcomers, even young returners from last year, that sort of thing going on, and just a lot of uncertainty with the team. But definitely we've seen after that tough start this season, men's soccer then won 3 of their next 4 matches, and then most recently lost to a very close winnable game that they, arguably should have won against Fairfield this past weekend. So what I wanted to ask you, and we'll start on the other side with Ryan this time, is just what are some of the key elements that have started to fall into place for this team identity-wise that's led to the improvement?
I mean, a huge factor is youth. You got a lot of energy out of this team, a lot of young talent going on. The guys really just having fun. You got a lot of adjustment period going on. You got a lot of foreign players. You got guys like Kyle Cavallette and the Verhul brothers, as well as Aaron Eula, I think his name is pronounced, going and building along. And those couple of those wins were at home as well. And you've got kind of a fiery crowd getting those guys up. A lot of youth, a lot of energy, a lot of passion going into the game. And I feel like identity-wise, you start kind of a build like an underdog mentality even at home with starting out with a couple of losses early. You kind of get to build that underdog mentality and then show it off at home and get some wins.
Yeah, I think for me it kind of comes with, you have a lot of leaders on this team too. Jamie Lowell I think has been a really good captain. I think he was a really good captain that Fairfield game right after they conceded. Kind of gathering the team in a team huddle. I think that's really important. Skylar, who's a really another good team leader. Kyle Evans. And there's young players, Evan Marquez, who's came through the ranks of the New York Red Bulls Academy, along with Kyle Evans. Those two are going to be really, really special together because they both pretty much play the same position as well. So, yeah, I mean, identity-wise, it's really hard to find yourself sometimes, especially with bringing in a lot of recruits. The Verhul brothers, I think, have been really good to this side. I want to get his name right. Heis Verhul, as I will say. Heis Verhul. The center back, I think, has been getting better over the last few games. I think he's that star center back. I think he's the star defender for this team, too. A defender who likes to step up. And I think through the moments, it's not easy in the early season of it, but over time, your identity will be seen. And, I think the Fordham game, LIU game were really good times to see that.
I agree. I think the identity's not there yet. And you can notice that, like people have been saying with all the roster additions, I've noticed that a lot of the times the lineups have not been consistent. I know Cunha, who was the captain last year, came off the bench early in the season. And you can see that with their passing on offense almost. One of my flaws with this team, what I've observed, is that they can't convert a lot of offensive opportunities. They didn't get a lot of corner kicks. They didn't get a lot of shots on target. And I feel like the shots on target issue, like they were outshot 7-0 in a half against Cornell. I mean, you have a bunch of new guys taking the field together. It's hard to get that rhythm established. But I have faith, since their lineup's getting closer and closer to being strained out, that over the course of the season, the offense is going to drastically improve because they will know their teammates a bit better, and they will know what type of passes they want to receive and where they will be on the field most likely.
And so then kind of diving in specifically, just looking at a bunch of the newcomers and also players who have returned but maybe are still on the younger side. And I'm not going to mention Jamie Lowell just yet because I have a separate question about him, the new goalkeeper. But obviously, you have Chris Verhoel coming over from the Netherlands, a 22-year-old freshman, which is definitely pretty advanced age, kind of shifting between like forward and that midfield position. He had a key goal earlier in the season to get started. And then Heis, his brother as well, who's played on the back line, also scored against LIU recently but did get hurt over the weekend in the match against Fairfield, so it'll be interesting to see. I think it was in the 54th minute, and he didn't return, so that'll be something to monitor moving forward. Kai Cavalette, who was playing more up last match on the front line. I think he's made 2 starts in a row and has given them kind of some energy and some aggression. Arian Uli, I believe is how it's pronounced, Ulai. And he's also been playing up a little bit more out of position and some of what he's given them. Obviously, Nicholas Sanchez returning this season as well to play more center back. Had some huge blocks this year, particularly a game-saving one against Army. Kyle Evans in the midfield, as you mentioned. Evan Marks, who also plays in that realm as well. So I want to just go around the horn here and kind of give you each a chance to just talk about some newcomers who have stuck out so far in their early going.
Well, first name that came to mind was Kyle Evans, and I'm not even a person that's very familiar with the team, but Kyle Evans has been great. I've noticed his make almost every goal kick by the other team. He's going to be on the ball. He's always fighting for possession. And then I'm not sure if he's a newcomer, but Jonathan Salguero, I think he's a sophomore, but he'll come off the bench and he'll make an impact. The Verhul brothers have been outstanding. They're always streaking down the field. But for me, I think the real gel of the midfield is Kyle Evans. I think he's really the conduit for everybody. I see him make all sorts of plays, whether it's heading out a loose ball, making a good pass just to get things started. I think he's the standout guy.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of guys for sure in the squad that could step up. I think one of them, Ethan Ortiz, he doesn't get talked about enough. I think his game against Fordham was unbelievable, and I think he might step in for Verhul in that center back position as well. And Nicholas Sanchez, as you said, I think is another really good defender who last year played a lot as well. Joseph Daher, who's in there too. I mean, he has the second most minutes in the squad behind Kyle Evans, who you've said already. I mean, there's not much more to say about Kyle Evans. He's an unbelievable player. Probably the best player on this side, and you can see that. He's very calm with the ball, but aggressive at the same time. And he's a versatile player in the midfield, which is also interesting. CDM, when he first came into the squad, he was looking like an attacking mid, so he's dropped back, and that comes with experience, of course, with defending. And then I think the Verhul brothers, I think they've been really good. Chris, it's an interesting one because he came into the squad as a striker, as it felt like, but the last few games he's been dropping into that attacking mid role. So
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that this team, for me, it has a lot of prospects, a lot of young guys who are going to really benefit from Marist.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I have a couple unsung heroes almost in both the fullbacks that have been playing, both Joseph Dare and Evan Marks, who kind of don't get as much praise. I know we've said Marks a couple times, but both of them have really been really crucial on either side of the field in defense. Not only in defense with kind of some of these home games recently in the defense that they've played, but getting up in attack too, overlapping the wingers, helping out in the midfield. I feel like they've been very crucial, especially in I think it was the Fordham game when Nicholas Sanchez was on the red card. It was very crucial for them to be able to step up a little bit. And even though they're both freshmen, they were able to step up and lock in a little bit and help get that win. And as well, Kyle Cavalette, who got his first start against LIU and just absolutely bossed the pitch. He was everywhere. He was winning tackles, playing good passes. I think he had a couple assists that game too, corner kicks, all that. He was everywhere, and I think he was kind of proving himself a little bit to the coach after not getting a start early in the year.
So then, particularly, talking about the Verhul brothers, it's clear that they were Marist was essentially put on their radar by Huib Akhterkamp, who was the Defensive Player of the Year in the MAAC a few years ago for Marist when they won the title in 2021. And then also I spoke with Jamie Lowell, and he told me, their new goalkeeper, about how Stefan Capetti, former player from the program who went to Maryland, kind of put Marist on his radar. So just, for any of you who want to maybe answer this, how important do you think it is, particularly for, smaller school, smaller program like Marist, to kind of have some of those either familial connections or personal relationships when it comes to recruiting?
I think it's massive. I really do. And I think Vigiano has a lot to do with it. I took a soccer coaching class last semester, and I remember when he was traveling over to the Netherlands, and, he was going to go and watch the Verhul brothers and probably other scouts. I don't really know too much. But what I will say is, I think knowing, the people who came out of Marist, knowing around, Yeah, it's really good, especially in the scouting world, and the European players too. Who there's a lot of European players in the MAAC. I want to say there was a Fairfield defender, Reed, who came out of Leicester's academy and then went right into Fairfield, and last game had an unbelievable game. So I think knowing those guys, maybe their European aspect, I think it's really beneficial.
I was gonna say, like, Marist, we boast a population of maybe 6,000. We have a lot of athletic teams. Not a lot of them are particularly like big on. We can't recruit everybody. We try to recruit maybe in the tri-state. It's kind of hard for us to get like talent for big schools, like places like Wisconsin. They can attract all types of recruits. So in Europe, where they have soccer academies that are way, way more devoted to and way more resources go into them, funds are allocated, I think it's so important that we can get an international connection. When I first heard that the team had recruited brothers from Netherlands, I was like this is kind of a new level thing. I mean, we're getting players from Europe. Like that, you just got to think of the culture. Like schools like in America, sometimes they don't even grow up with like a soccer team that people really play for. But academies in Europe are the real deal. So I think having player connections, past graduates, being able to get talent from overseas is like something that will take the talent of this school to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of just building off what August said. I feel like, in a way, the players that you coach, like for Vigiano, become scouts as well in the future. Like, not directly like they're looking for players, but they're telling their guys that they know about Marist. They're recommending the program. They're telling them to talk to Vig. Like, they're scouting a little bit out for Marist because they went there and they liked the program. So they're saying, hey, you should check this out. And that in turn brings back more players.
Yeah, and I think, to August, to your point, and speaking with Kyle Cavalet after one of the recent matches, he was talking about how soccer or football, it's very different here than where he's from in Brazil, but just having some of that international presence, I'm sure it definitely helps, especially with the intensity of the program, given how big the sport is, in some of these other nations that they're coming over from. So now to talk about Jamie Lowell and really just the goalkeeping situation in its totality. I'm old enough to remember 3 years ago when Sam Illen was the goalkeeper back when I think he was the goalkeeper of the year in the conference in 2020, and then in 2021 they won the conference. Back when I was a freshman, I was just a spectator in the stands, not yet involved with center field heavily, so I was able to bull rush the field after the match when they won it all in penalty kicks. Very exciting, fond memory that I have. Obviously would not have done that if I was in a journalist role. And then, last year they went and got the Italian goalkeeper who's a grad student in Luca Buffon because they were searching for kind of that veteran presence on the back end. Especially with a very, very young roster last year. And he had a solid season, but then ran out of eligibility. And then a similar tactic this offseason, and they brought in Jamie Lowell, a goalkeeper who had a very intriguing resume at Maryland especially. He started 25 matches there, allowed just over 1 goal against average for a big Division I program, which was definitely an impressive track record. And so for his final year, he came to Marist. And, I think Vig was similarly looking for that veteran presence on the back end. And he told me, in the season preview interview that I did with him, that Lowell's essentially the most vocal goalkeeper he's ever coached in his time at Marist, which definitely, I think, for a team like this where they're mixing and matching lineups, definitely works to their benefit because they have somebody back there who can kind of direct traffic and that sort of thing. And so, with some of the big saves he's made so far this season, I just wanted to ask you guys, with their third goalkeeper in 3 seasons, how do you view his leadership role and experience kind of elevating the team?
I was going to say the big save thing is like the leadership too. I've seen him make some incredible saves. He gets right back up. He's talking to defenders like on his team. He's getting them organized for the corner kick that comes because he deflects the ball out of bounds. He's already up. He's telling his guys about the corner kick. He's pointing. I mean, you can just see it. As soon as you said that he has a vocal impact, it just it's everywhere. He talks, he yells across the field to people in the midfield. He's always talking to his defenders. The only thing that I can say is that it sucks that his eligibility is going to run out after this year, right? He's a grad student. So it's like I can respect Vig's kind of idea of getting veteran presence in the back end. But at the same time, this team's only going to get older. And the goalkeeper that they have this year is going to leave. And then they're going to need a new guy. So then the leadership's going to be different. I think maybe in the next year or maybe 2 years from now, They need to get a goalkeeper that's maybe just as young as some of the people they're bringing in and maybe develop that leadership over time, because I feel like they're going to miss Lowell next year. And, maybe if they had someone else with the same sort of leadership skills next year, they'll be in a better spot. It might be kind of tough to replace Jamie Lowell.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one because, I mean, what Luke said earlier, Luca Buffon last year was just an incredible goalie who came in from Italy and obviously has the Buffon name, which is amazing, after Gianluigi Buffon over here. But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the idea that Vig is going for. I kind of like the 1-year goalie thing because sometimes getting that best goalie and getting the best attributes of him in his last season, it could be really, it could be beneficial. And I think for Lowell, I mean, it's insane they got him 25 games starting, which is really unbelievable for a Maryland goalie as well, But I think his presence on the field, I mean, you'll be up in the commentator's booth and you can hear him screaming. And I think having a vocal goalie is so important because he is the last line of defense. He can see everything on the field from a different perspective to anybody else. And I think, I mean, they have a few recruits, of course, this year. I think they have 2 or 3 freshman goalies, I want to say, that they brought into the program. And those guys can just feed off of Lowell, which I think is just a really, really good thing as well. Experience is unbelievable, and I think they're going to learn a lot from Jamie. So,
yeah, I mean, you kind of brought up the point I was going to go with there is that he's coming from a big program. Maryland's not a small team at all. They're pretty good most years. And, yeah, you only have him around for 1 year, like August said, and that might not be the best thing in the world, but he's going to, at that point, especially at the keeper position, is one of more like a player coach. Like, he's going to be the guy who's leading the other keepers, like Finn just said, with all the younger keepers, but he's also going to be the guy instilling some of those leadership values on guys like maybe Cunha or Evans, who are going to be in more of a leadership role next year, even more so than they are right now, or maybe either the Verschuel brothers who might be in the leadership position next year, guys who are going to be coming up in the program and leading these next generation of teams that are going to hopefully be just as good as the ones that we had a couple years ago.
So then I wanted to bring up actually Cunha as well as Skylar Cunha and Richard Morrell, because they were really 2 of the focal points in the attack last season. Particularly Morrell for a few years running has been one of the top goal scorers for the team. Obviously, he had that devastating knee injury, I think during his sophomore year, that wiped him out for the rest of the season, and he was really recovering from that last season. And then Cunha last season was a captain, and last season into this season as well has played a huge role in a lot of the set pieces. He had an unfortunate miss the other day on a penalty kick that would have tied the match with about, I think, 30 minutes left against Fairfield. But regardless, he's still kind of been an integral force, for the team with some of that. But definitely both of these players did take a bit of a back seat. They started on the bench this season as Vij was toying around with some new lineups in the early going, and they've slowly started to integrate more and more and more. So I guess we'll start with Ryan. What do you think maybe some of the reasoning might have been for that? Do you think it was more so just ramping them up? And then, also how important is their integration for Marist?
I mean, yeah, starting the season on the bench, it definitely gets them a little bit more integrated and ramped up slowly. You never really know how a guy's going to react off an injury like that, as well as specifically for Morrell, but more as well Cunha. Like, you never really know what a new group is going to be like for a team, especially a guy who might have been hurt or had a different issue with all the things that are going on off the field that could come into play. And it's been huge, I feel like, coming in from the team, starting in the team, Morrell with the 2 goals to get the win against Fordham. It's just the type of story that makes you want to watch sports, coming off the bench after a big injury and coming in and getting 2 huge goals in a win over a ranked team at home in front of all the fans. But I mean, I think they're definitely 2 guys for the team to learn from, who have been through it, been through the years, been through injuries and difficulties and all that, who have still battled through the adversity and still come through and been crucial to the team.
Yeah, I think it's, I played soccer and I've, started on the bench, and it's not easy. And especially at this level, it's really not easy. For Morrell, he's a senior now, so it kind of brings in, like, how many more opportunities am I going to get as a D1 player? How many opportunities how many more minutes will I see? And I think with Skylar, I mean, he started off, in this program really quickly, getting minutes right away. And yeah, I think seeing him not get minutes, it's almost like an eye opener, I think some would say. So yeah, sometimes as a coach, you switch things around. You want to try new things, especially with the young guys that they've brought in. Evan Marks, who is a new player who kind of looks like he might switch into Cunha's role after he might be gone. But I think Skylar and Richard are two very important players to this side still, especially Morel. We were at that Fordham game, and he brings a leadership aspect to this team like no other. Vigiano tearing up, you can see it. So they kind of represent that Red Fox mentality, and I think I think they're going to see a lot more minutes throughout this season, and I could see them two of them starting in the starting lineup for next game.
We've said it for the entire duration of this podcast. This is a young team, and Cunha was a captain last year. Morel is a senior. For the young guys coming in that maybe aren't getting play time, seeing a former captain and a guy who's absolutely electric next to you on the bench can be insanely helpful, just to kind of keep your head cool. You're a freshman, you're not getting playing time, but here are like pretty good players for this program in the same boat as you. You can learn from them. Cunha's probably he's got leadership skills. He can help all these guys. And Morel coming in and scoring those 2 goals, that's just something, frankly, that's kind of been missing from the Red Fox attack kind of all year. Like, it sounds simple, but goal scoring, I guess, like making use of opportunities, getting quality shots. Like, I feel like Morel, once he's fully ramped up, this offense can really unlock itself truly. And because we saw it at Fordham, that's a ranked win, and it was off his back. So I think when he's fully healthy and he's in the lineup, everyone's going to benefit on the offensive side.
So you guys already have started alluding to some of the games on the schedule, particularly the Fordham match that was really so pivotal. Getting a win over a nationally ranked opponent definitely was an unexpected outcome that day. So we're going to kind of go through some of the big matches this season that have really been inflection points for this team and kind of break down what you guys saw. So the first one that sticks out to me is the 1-0 road win over Army. Obviously, that's their first win of the season, but I really viewed that as a turning point for this team coming off of the really tough road trip. And I know obviously like it's a road game in Army, but it's 30 minutes from here, so they got to at least be home and practice here and prepare for the match here. And Christopher Houle scored his first goal in a breakout game that he had. He also had another phenomenal shot in that match. That was honestly an even better shot than the one that he scored a goal on. And there was a key offsides call on Army in the 69th minute that prevented them from tying the match. So, there was a little bit of, fortune involved. But the biggest thing that stuck out to me in that match was Marist's defensive stamina. And particularly, the defense held strong the entire match despite Army continuing to press and apply pressure. And to see them perform that way after how the first 3 matches has gone, that really stuck out to me. And especially with Nicolas Sanchez having a huge block and Jamie Lowell making some fantastic saves. So, just really thinking about that match, if any of you have any takeaways, go for it.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned about the defense. I've noticed it even when they lost 3-0 to Cornell. The way that they're losing these games is because their offensive attack has floundered a bit, and the defense can only hold for so long. So sometimes when you see a 3-0 score, you think, wow, they let up 3 goals. They scored 0. They had so many attacks. Like, I think Cornell tallied like over 13 shots confidently, and only 3 goals. The offensive attack just didn't look like it should, but I've been noticing it for almost all the games I've covered. The defense is really special. I think their stamina has been incredible. They don't let anything really hit them. Sure, they get a goal scored against them, they get right back up. Lowell's communicating. It's like the 5th corner kick in maybe 10 minutes. Lowell's communicating. They're not letting anything shake them. And I think the defensive unit, once this offensive unit starts picking up, people are going to really see that this unit will prevent goals being scored.
Yeah, and, to go off of that, I totally agree with that. That Army game was so important for them because getting a clean sheet, it feels so good when you get a clean sheet because you just feel like everything went your way. and you feel dominant too, which is a really good thing, to go off of. But yeah, I think their defense looks really good, and I think they have players on the bench that can also provide some really good stuff defensively. As I said, Ethan Ortiz is one. They have a lot of players, and Jamie Lowell in the goalie position, did really well in that Army game, as you said. I thought Marist were going to score more. I just thought their opportunities were up that game. Chris Verhule, that was, in my opinion, his best game in a Red Fox shirt. And yeah, you're going against an aggressive Army side, and they had to bring that aggression, Marist did, and I felt like they did, but not in a way that they were going to get suspensions and red cards. So I thought it was a really good takeaway and pro of a game to go from,
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say that hasn't been said so far from you guys. It's a massive win to get your first win. Again, I think Luke said it basically felt like a home game. It's 30 minutes away. It's not far down the road at all, especially if you're coming from 2 tough losses at Milwaukee and not that far away, but still a tough 3-0 loss at Cornell. You're just kind of thinking we need to get one. We're going into some home games. It's a winnable game, and to go out there and to be able to do it, get your first win of the season against a decent Army team, and that's a decent league that you kind of has some prestige as being Army, like the National Military Academy. Like, it's kind of a big win to get. Yeah, shutout is very big as well. You always want to get that. Your first win of the season being a shutout must feel good as well, especially after conceding, I think we said it was 13 goals in those first 3 games. That's got to feel good, and that I would honestly say that gave them some energy and some confidence coming into these tough home games that we had.
So then the next match, we got to talk about it, that Fordham win. That was one of the most notable matches that I've ever covered, and I've been on this beat. This is my 3rd season now. Coming into the match, obviously Fordham was ranked 18th, and it didn't start well for Marist. They had, earmarked Daniel DiPolito came into the match, I think, with 4 goals in just 6 matches, and he was the number 1 player that they needed to go ahead and, really focus on, and he scored in the 3rd minute. So that was immediately pretty deflating for Marist, and that was the second time this season they had allowed a goal in the 3rd minute. I think in the Cornell match that you covered, they also allowed one in the 3rd minute. So, you're sitting up there in the booth, and a few of you were there as well with me, and you're thinking, okay, Marist is going against a ranked opponent. They let up a goal to their best player in the 3rd minute, and it's not the first time that that's happened. They're probably not going to pull this one out, except that's not what happened. Richard Morel had the ultimate rebound game, and both of his crucial goals, they were scored on well-developed offensive plays for Marist that really came together and relied on numerous players to kind of make it happen. And there were some fortunate bounces on both of the shots that allowed them to go in. But definitely for him, it was a super emotional game. In the post-game interview that I did with Coach Vij, he was welling up, talking about everything that Morel had been through with his knee injury. And then when I was speaking with him, he seemed almost like relieved in talking with him, just to finally be able to have that kind of performance. So first thing I wanted to ask is just, really what does that performance mean to him? And do you think it's sustainable moving forward?
I'll be interested to see if it's sustainable. It's definitely, I think I agree with you saying it's relieving for him to get some of that confidence back, and to get it in that type of win with that type of performance is absolutely massive for an athlete's confidence. Just to knowing that you can do it, especially for him after that injury that he had and not really getting much game time last season and even starting on the bench this season, to know that you still have it and that you are still going to be able to contribute is just the ultimate confidence booster. And that win as a whole was it was huge. I noticed there was a lot of subs that were mixing up looks. It was in front of a huge home crowd. And after Marist conceded in the 3rd minute, it was kind of like we were looking at each other like, oh, I don't know, this might just be a long game. And then it wasn't. They got it. They brought it back in. And in the second half specifically, I remember as Fordham kept pushing to get that equalizing goal, Marist just brought the energy, and they brought it in front of the home crowd. And there was multiple moments. I remember specifically a Kyle Evans tackle where it was like 10 feet away from the bench, and he just pumped everyone up. And it was a huge roar. And it was a very chaotic moment, to say the least, but it was also just a very energetic moment for what is a youthful team getting a big win.
Yeah, I think from an overall standpoint, when you concede in the 3rd minute from a team ranked 18th in the nation, a lot of people could go, oh my God. But I think what we've seen with this team time and time again is they just get right back up. You know, they're relentless. They want to win games, and I think that's also a really good thing with Viggiano too. You know, in the way that he thinks. But I think if you look at it, it's almost like, well, maybe we can only be better from here. You know, conceding 3 minutes in, which was a really good goal from Fordham to give it from their standpoint. You know, that ball went, I think, the top right corner. It was almost unsavable. It can only go up from here. And it was a rough first half, but I have to say that Richard Morel, I mean, that first goal was just unbelievable. He started at the 50-yard line, and I think, you know, somebody, I don't know where that came from. You know, I mean, you go through a knee injury and then you have a solo goal like that. It's one of those things that, like, you can only dream of, you know, and he did that. So I think with this Marist side, that game was so huge. It's a booster in every way. It's an energy booster. It's a morale booster. It's for them, that win, and you could see it in everybody's faces. You know, they've been, Viggiano was, very vocal about this, you know, with fans showing up to games. More fans are going to show up to games when you have wins like that, especially against the 18th team in the nation. And by the way, that second half from Marist is one of the best halves I've ever seen them play. If they played like that in every game, they would, I mean,
they'd be ranked.
Yeah, they would be ranked. MAAC championship, you know, I'm just saying. So you would see these things happen, and I think for them that was a really vital win.
Yeah. I mean, 13-1 the first 3 games on the road. We talked about it at the beginning of the podcast. It's just resilience. It's what they gained from that road trip. They didn't just gain 3 losses. They gained the ability to do stuff like this. Because I don't know how Fordham's ranks stacked up with the ranks of the teams that they played on the road, but I'm sure it was even. Like, I'm sure it was the same caliber of team. They come off losing 3-0 to Cornell. They allow 2 goals in the first 10 minutes, right? Now they're at home. They're finally at home. And they're playing an even tougher opponent, and they give up a goal in the 3rd minute. Any other team that hadn't been through this 4 times by now would have crumbled. And they didn't crumble, and that is what they gained from those road trips, was being able to pull off comebacks like that. And for Morel, I mean, that's just, I don't want to echo the same thing over and over again, but that's just incredible. I mean, I wasn't even at the game, but I read the story. And, like, 2 goals off the bench, off an injury, get the guys a win at home over a ranked team. I literally cannot think of a more valuable performance, like, in the past 2 years for this club.
Another key thing, too, in that match was they were without Nicolas Sanchez. He was serving a red card suspension, and they were still able to put up that sort of defensive performance. So I don't know, for any of you who want to take this, what does it say about Marist's depth and ability on defense that they were able to withstand his loss in that kind of match?
Yeah, I think that was a major step up from Ethan Ortiz, a guy who I think at that point only saw really limited minutes. I think it wasn't even over 50 that he saw minutes-wise. And, you know, for Vidge to give him the start, I mean, you can only imagine a start against a ranked team. You haven't played a lot of minutes this season. I mean, you want to put in one of the best performances of your life, and Ethan Ortiz did. I think their depth in defense is their best position, that in midfield, I think. I mean, it shows you a lot. It shows you that they have a lot of future in that defensive position. And even a player like Evan Marks, who can maybe even drop back at center back because CDMs can do that. I think it shows you a lot. And the standpoint for Marist, I would be really, really happy in the next few years with the defensive position.
One more point I wanted to bring up about this match, too, was just in the postgame, seeing the raw emotion from Matt Viggiano, the head coach, about Morel. What does it mean to have a coach like that who is that invested in the lives of his players that he expresses that kind of emotion?
I think it's absolutely huge. Going through 18 years, you're going to be coaching a lot of players, and be forming emotional connections like that with players is just, it appeals to the human side of it, because, you know, it's a results business. He said that multiple times, but you still got to coach these guys. You still got to get up early mornings with them and go out there and work with them and all that. And having a coach that you know cares for you like that and wants you to succeed and wants you to do those things, not just to get results, but to better you as a human and to let you get through these things and help you get through these things and build yourself up, is just, it's absolutely massive towards being more comfortable on the field. You get more comfortable with the role he's asking you to play or the things he's asking you to do on the field, and even leading in practice as well. Morel, as a senior now, he's been through the ringer. it's a very important piece of being a coach. It's an underrated part of it.
I was gonna say, being a college athlete is hard. It's one of the hardest things you can do. You wake up early mornings, late nights, train. For your potential collegiate career to be derailed by an injury is enough for most to stop playing the sport. And for a coach to be behind you every step of the way, get emotional when you have an amazing bounce back game, that is why players are attracted to Viggiano. That's why players want to play for Viggiano. That's why graduates go overseas and tell people to play for Viggiano. It's stuff like that. It helps the program immensely.
Yeah, and as you said, he's been here 18 years, but he also played here, and I think it's a really major aspect to almost see your coach. Okay, so he's played for these colors, he's coached for these colors, and he's also a guy who I can go to anytime, as it feels like with these players because they're so united with him. I think it just sky's the limits. With having a coach like that. And a coach with passion is just so major, I think, in the sport of soccer. I think, in any sport too, but I think, when, as you said, D1 players are training every day. This is their life. And to see and have a coach almost view that and see that, and he wants the best for his players, and he wants to almost fight for these players, I think it's just a really huge aspect of this whole program.
Couple more matches that I really wanted to pinpoint and get your thoughts on before we then talk about expectations for the season. The 3-2 home win over LIU was a really, really interesting match because for about the first 65 or so minutes, Marist seemed like they were in complete control of the match. I think they had, 3 different goal scorers and, 3 other players provide assists. It was just one of those matches where they were getting contributions from up and down the roster, and everything seemed to be going well. And then LIU reeled off a couple of quick goals, and suddenly Marist was on their heels, really just fighting to save the lead. And there were so many close calls at the end of the match there where they almost blew it, honestly, as LIU really was able to turn the tide and wear Marist down and make a furious comeback. So how hard is it for a team to maintain composure in that sort of situation when they can feel like the match is almost starting to slip away?
I feel like for Marist, it was a huge learning moment. This is a team that got beat down for a lot of the games of the season. This is a team that lost. And now you give them a 3-0 lead. They want to coast. They haven't felt what it was like to be up by that much. It's very easy for a young team up 3-0 to coast. And I think it's very important that LIU came back in that game because now they know. Now they know they can't take their foot off the gas. Now they know that they have to put their foot on the gas at all times, whether they're down or if they're up 5-0. So I think the fact that the LIU came back, probably detrimental to Coach Viggiano's eyes. I would lose my mind. But it's going to do wonders for this team moving forward because now they know they can't take the foot off the gas. And they know they can get really solid victories that might end 3-0 as opposed to 3-2.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what you just said, foot off the gas specifically, is what Viggiano said in the interview after we took the foot off the gas, and kind of let them get back into it. And I feel like that speaks to both sides of the youth that this team has with all the energy and the young goal scorers going up 3-0 in the first half, but then those guys maybe not being able to hold it with coasting a little bit. They want to feel what it's like to have a big win in college soccer, and especially against a team like LIU that's not really a conference rival at all, but a local rival nonetheless. They're pretty close, and it's a team we have experienced before, and it's a tough feeling to have to try to balance that, but definitely it should be a learning experience for them, and next time they get in that situation, if and when it happens, it probably will go differently.
I think, I'm from Long Island, and I've seen LIU's program, and I would say for the most part, they're a really good team. I had a trainer only a few years ago who was from Germany who played for LIU, and they have a ton of European players, a ton of depth. They're a team that has been really coached well, and to go up against them 3-0, you kind of are in the place of what do we do next? And, it's almost like, what do we do next? We've never been in this position, 3-0 at this point in the game. And then, you can lose your head within a second. And, I think that's what sort of happened. But I think it's even a major aspect to see them not draw that game and to get the win out. I think that's just, it really speaks for itself.
So another match, really the final match that I wanted to hit on was the one from this past weekend. Their opener against Fairfield. It was their first MAAC match of the season. Marist went on the road, not too far of a drive from here. But definitely Marist had higher hopes for their first conference game than how it ended up playing out. It was kind of slick weather conditions, definitely pretty rainy, drizzly, especially in the first half. And it really, led to some players kind of, there was definitely some traction things going on there. Kyle Evans got his, what I believe is his first goal this season in the 15th minute. And Fairfield had a really interesting start to their season. I believe they started 0-6. They had a pretty nightmarish start, but then they ended up getting a win and then drawing with a ranked opponent kind of coming into MAAC play. So they were able to establish a little bit of momentum and then really carry it over into this match. And the first, it was really their two big goal scorers that scored. The first goal that was scored, it was just really on a quick developing play with a couple of perfect passes, and it really gave Jamie really no time to react in goal. And then the second goal came right before the half on a free kick that was then headed in, just perfect execution. And Marist, they faced some adversity in this match. Obviously, Heis Verhoel left with injury, and Ethan Ortiz came in and played really well. He even was garnering praise from the broadcasters who were covering that match while I was watching it for his fill-in job during the match. But the key moment was, I think with 29 minutes left to go, Skylar Cunha came up to take a penalty kick because I believe Richard Morel had been tripped up in the box, and it would have tied the match. And instead, his shot went really, just straight at the goalkeeper, close to the ground. And then Marist, wasn't really able to get any traction beyond that. So I wanted to just talk about takeaways from that match. Particularly, it was a match where Marist had 12 corner kicks compared to only 2 for Fairfield. They had more shots on goal. How do you walk away from a match like that where you feel like, you maybe should have at least gotten 1 point or maybe even 3 points, and instead you walk away with no points?
I think Ryan can speak to this too. Same exact game script happened against Albany. They had more shots, more corners, and they walked away with no goals. And when we spoke to Vij after the game, he was very blunt. He was very straightforward, which we can see as one of his defining characteristics. He was like, sometimes it's not going to go your way. Sometimes the game's unfair to you, because they had a lot of corner kicks, crosses, could not get a goal, could not buy a goal if they wanted to. And I think sometimes that's how it's gonna be. They're gonna go on the road to Fairfield. The weather's not gonna be ideal. Fairfield's got the momentum. They have expectations for MAAC play. Sometimes you're not gonna convert all the chances you want. For Skylar, that's gonna sit with him. He's experienced. He knows he can't be doing that, but that's gonna sit with the team. And for me, I have not very high, but I do have high expectations for MAAC play this year, because I think they've got all the tools. They've taken all that they can take away. They've taken all that they can take away from these past games against higher ranked opponents, and they're going to put it into play. I think they can beat MAAC teams moving forward, but I think this is a loss you just have to take on the chin.
Yeah, I think in soccer that's kind of how it goes. It can be anybody's game, and one goal can define everything. And that's, what happened. As you said, Luke, the weather of that game, rain game is one of those games where literally anything could happen. And, I think I know Skylar's already scored a penalty this season. I think that was against Marquette. So, he, I think, is stepping up in that situation and going, oh, well, I can score it. Sometimes conditions can go against you, too, so who knows if that, played an element in there. But I thought they played really good, and I thought Kyle Evans, that was one of his best matches, not just because he scored. I thought his dribbling was fantastic. I thought his passing was really good. The goal he scored was really, really good, and it was literally out of nothing. I think the ball got played in from a corner. It got dropped to him. He took a shot, top right corner, unsavable. It was a great goal, and then the first goal they conceded, it was pass, step over, the ball slipped through. As you said, Jamie had absolutely no time no reaction, and you can't in that situation, A ball comes in really quick. They checked offsides, I believe, for like 10 minutes.
Long review.
Yeah, it was a really long review. which plays in the element. And then I kind of talked about it earlier, but that's when Jamie in that moment tried to pick up his team. And I thought they played a lot better from that point on, but as you said, conceded that second one. And that's sometimes how the great game goes. But I think expectations-wise, I think they'll really think of this one. It's a tough one. Fairfield's kind of, I feel like at times, our rival through other sports too. And they'll be picked up from this. This is a really good, I think, curve from here to go up.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, this is the kind of loss that sits with you and the kind of loss you're really honestly pissed off about, especially for Schuyler in that match to have missed the penalty. You need to go back out there and get a result, and I think the benefit of them playing tonight is that it's a very quick turnaround to go and play a pretty decent team in Lehigh and getting a chance to go back and prove yourself after you just won a couple matches. You got some confidence back into your team. You got some rejuvenated energy. You really wanted to go out and then to take the lead against another MAAC team in your first MAAC game in those conditions and then to lose it in that way and to not be able to even get a draw to come back, that stings, and that's the kind of loss that you really are pissed off about and you really want to go out and get a result in your next game, and to not have to sit on it and not have to wait that long, to be still with some of that energy for sure, especially for some of those guys like Schuyler or Kyle Evans who did contribute or didn't contribute specifically. It's just big to be able to go back out there and get a result, and I feel like they'll be looking to bounce back, and Lee has the last non-conference opponent we play, Marist plays, so it'll be an interesting way to see how they define the rest of their season off of that loss.
So you actually prefaced what we're going to wrap up with perfectly, because it's time to talk about expectations for the rest of conference play and really the rest of the season. And definitely we'll get all of your expectations, but kind of just taking into account, Viz's cautious optimism at the beginning of the season, and then what you guys have all seen transpire so far. What do you foresee for this team for the rest of the season? We'll start with you.
I feel like it could be a pretty decent rest of the season, especially off of those LIU and Fordham wins. Despite the rough start to the season, you might have had a negative outlook going into the rest of it. But I think we could expect a little bit around 500 or above 500 play in the MAAC. Not exactly sure what the MAAC might look like this year, but from the losses we've had and the tight ones we've had recently in those games, the Albany loss and the Fairfield loss now, as well as the 2 wins, definitely signs of improvement and signs of a team that is figuring it out and getting there. And then the Lehigh game will definitely be a test for it, but then you go right into the rest of the season being MAAC play. And it'll be tough to see who steps up for sure, because right now you've got, I think Marist has scored 9 goals throughout the season so far, and you've got like 6 different goal scorers. So are you going to see some specific guys step up? Is it going to be a Morel or Verhule, a Kyle Evans? You're going to kind of see a team aspect, and honestly, I can expect pretty decent soccer, but nothing crazy. Might look to make a run deeper in the postseason.
Yeah, I think with expectations, I think their play might not be consistent, but it really could be. And it kind of just, I think, all comes up from, how they take this Fairfield loss. I think that's going to be a really big thing. Seeing the next game against Lehigh, which is an opponent that I think, they will beat, but we'll see what happens. And I think we'll see a lot of new opportunities given to players as well. But I think realistically, I do think they're going to get over 500 for sure. I think that's a definite. I think with looking at the other teams and how things could shape up, I think Marist really, getting a ranked win is really big. Getting a win against LIU, Army. These are teams that are no joke and are better than maybe some of the other MAAC teams that we could see that we're going to be against in the next few weeks here, that Marist are going to be against. And so I think they will get over 500. I could see them really making the semifinals, but hey, we'll see. And I think guys that will step up, Morel's going to be one for sure. I think from here, I think he's going to get goals. Verheel as well, but Kyle Evans, I think that's a person that you really need to step up. And he stepped up against Fairfield. Don't get me wrong. Maybe Schuyler too. We could really see some really good play from Schuyler. And then I think the other players, Evan Marks. I really think that he's going to be so beneficial for this Red Fox side throughout the season in that 6th position.
As a Marist soccer casual and almost a soccer casual as a whole coming into the season, watching the games, it's very easy to say, wow, they're getting destroyed. But then you get the context and it's like they're playing really good programs. Now there's almost a misconception you can make where it's like, okay, they've been a ranked team. They've lost to some ranked teams. They should be able to win confidently games that aren't ranked. That's a mindset that I think can be damaging. I think this season is going to be a very bend, don't break season. I think they'll want desperately to win against MAAC teams because they've played so many ranked teams. They're going to think that they can beat them assuredly, which is not a bad mindset to have, don't get me wrong. But if you take that loss, if you go into Fairfield and you lose, you're not happy about it. Are you going to let that destroy your season or not? I think this is a team, like everyone has said here, could be over 500. They've taken bad losses. They've had great wins. They're going to play only MAAC teams for the rest of the year, right? So they need to really make sure that if they take a loss in these MAAC plays, that doesn't let them derail their season. Because every single other game past it will be another MAAC school. They're not going to face another ranked school like Fordham again, like Wisconsin again. So if they lose, I just hope that they stay grounded, stay confident in themselves, and then I think they'll be able to make it to over 500.
And can I add one more thing? Something that you kind of just made me think of is exactly they're against MAAC teams for the rest of the season after this game against Lehigh. After this game against Lehigh, they're only against MAAC teams, which is a point that you brought up. But yeah, now you're playing teams that are on your level for the rest of the season, and that is usually the hardest opponents to verse because teams that are your own level at this point, they're going to be close games. And there are going to be games that, yes, sometimes you lose, but you have to get back up. This is a side that has done that. But I think it's going to be a really interesting point to see other games where they have opponents that almost are just like them to go against each other. And I think that's going to be a really interesting point for Marist.
I do not want them derailed because it's almost on a 180. They get destroyed. They think that they're not very good. Then they play teams like Fordham and even teams on their level. They win. They think, okay, this is a perspective check. Now, against MAAC teams on your level, if you lose, please know that you can win the next game. And as far as goal scorers, I don't know because there's been a lot of goal scorers. Morel looks great, right? But we have no idea what could be going on with the knee. We have no idea when he'll get into the game. Someone needs to emerge. That's what I think. Because the team passing attack has not looked great. The corners, everything, the breakaway plays have not looked ideal. If they could really develop like an X in the middle who, when the ball is placed at his feet, can deliver a shot, like a good quality shot consistently, that would be incredible for this team.
Think that's Kyle?
I think it could be Morel off the bench. I think it is Kyle. I want to say one of the Verhul brothers down the side, but I think Kyle is the X on this team.
I agree, yeah.
The offense needs a guy that they can give the ball to put a shot somewhere in the net. That's what I think will make this offense great.
Just to give some of my final thoughts on expectations for this season, I think you see a lot in sports, whether it's collegiate sports or professional sports, that having a ton of firm expectations to be successful can actually be detrimental, and it can place the weight of the world on a team. I mean, I saw it with this program the season after they won the MAAC championship, and obviously, they lost half of their roster because when you're successful, players transfer out, they're coveted, that sort of thing happens. But they still had an expectation, at least the next season, to make it into the MAAC tournament, and they didn't. They came up short, and there was a lot of close games that they weren't able to pull out because there was some pressure there to be successful on the heels of a very successful run. And they really did not play as loose as you would have liked. And last year there was really lesser expectations because it was really a rebuild year for the program with the youth, and they ended up making the tournament. And now I think still the vagueness that you see with some of the expectations this season can really be of benefit to them as they don't necessarily feel the pressure to succeed. I mean, you see examples like this in professional sports all the time. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a diehard Mets fan, and I mean, I've seen it with that franchise, the season that they had in 2022 and the expectations in 2023 with the free agency signings and trades that they made, and to just completely collapse under the weight of those expectations, was huge. And then to see them this season with no expectations, low expectations, actually completely thrive, I think is telling into how the psyche of having those expectations can weigh on you. So I think they're in a good spot there's definitely reasons for optimism and hope, but not necessarily a complete and total confidence that it's going to manifest itself in a successful season. They know they have to go out and earn it. And so I think that will light a fire under the team week to week. But I think that's it for all the time that we have here today. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Relay Throw. And I want to thank each of you for being on this episode today and for all of your insights. It went really well.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Of course.